Another day, another episode. Today we're going to be talking about a mod that I personally think needs to be discussed more in the BMW community, and that's water meth injection systems. Is it a smart way to squeeze out more power for your N55, or is it just too risky? Let's go over it and break it down, and then I'll be doing an install of AEM's V3 water meth injection system on the 640. So let's get into it. So first, let's have a conversation about what is methanol. Methanol is a type of alcohol-based fuel that's colorless, flammable, and burns extremely clean. In the automotive performance world, it's used for cooling and octane boosting properties, mainly in the water methanol injection systems. Now, unlike gasoline, methanol evaporates extremely quickly and absorbs a lot of heat, making it ideal for cooling down intake air temperatures, or IATs as we all know it, and preventing engine knock and turbocharged and high compression engines. It also has a high octane rating, typically of over or around 110, which this helps safely run more boost and more aggressive timing. Now, I'm sure you've heard of methanol being used as a primary fuel in race cars. That's more rare in street cars. In street cars, it's usually mixed with water and injected into your intake system or charge pipe to help increase performance. Now, if you haven't seen videos of a methanol fire, here's a video of one. In this video, there's actually a fire burning here, but you can't see it. That's the scary part about methanol. Methanol fires are extremely dangerous, not because they burn hotter or spread faster than any other fuel, but because they're often invisible to the naked eye, especially during the day. Methanol burns with a clean, almost invisible blue flame. This means a methanol fire can be raging without producing smoke or any obvious flames. In a race or a garage environment, someone could be on fire and not even know it right away. Now, I bring this up because I just want people to be aware of the hazards of using methanol and to treat it with respect like you should all fuels. Now, you might say, but yeah, I'm running a water meth 50-50 mixture. Can it still ignite? And the answer is yes. Water methanol mix can still ignite and burn, but not in the same way a pure methanol or gasoline fire would burn. It requires the right conditions and it depends on the methanol concentration. A typical methanol concentration that you would use in some of the street cars is normally 50-50, 50% methanol and 50% water. At this ratio, the flammability is significantly lower, but not eliminated. The methanol portion is still flammable, but the water acts kind of as a suppressant. Yes, it can ignite, but it's harder to light than pure methanol or gasoline, obviously. The flame would also be less intense, but still mostly invisible, like other methanol fires. Higher methanol ratios like 70-30 or pure meth are obviously more flammable and easier to ignite. So now, you might ask me, is it really worth taking all the risk to run water meth injection system on my car? And that all depends, but personally, I say yes. So let's talk about what a water meth injection system does for your BMW. Now, water meth kits spray a mix of water and methanol into the intake charge to cool the air, add some octane, and can even be used as a supplemental fuel to a certain point. We all know colder air means more timing, more boost, more power. Hence why we call colder weather, boost season. It's pretty well known and common knowledge with the N55 that once it sees over 110 or 115 degrees IATs, the DME will actually start to pull time to prevent knock, and you will essentially start to lose power, sometimes referred to as being heat soaked. Now, you can help this by using an upgraded intercooler, but let's face it, intercoolers do a good job, but you likely won't be seeing any IATs below ambient air temperatures, and that's where a water meth injection system can help. But let me answer a few questions I get about water meth injections first. First question I always get is, do you need a custom tune for water meth injection? The answer is yes and no. I know that sounds kind of confusing, but it really depends on the size of the spray nozzle you're using and your intended purpose for using the water meth injection system. Let's start with the answer to that question being no. No, you don't need a custom tune if your main goal is just to cool down intake air temperatures or IATs. In this case, you would use a smaller nozzle. For instance, AEM offers a 300cc nozzle, which is generally safe and won't have a big impact on fueling or timing. but it's enough to get your IATs down 15, even sometimes 20 degrees, depending on the conditions. Now, once you move up to something that's like a 500 cc nozzle, you're entering a range where meth isn't just cooling IATs, it's also acting as a mild octane booster. This starts to affect fuel trims and timing, and depending on your setup, a custom tune might be recommended for this. But when you go beyond 500 cc's, I personally strongly recommend a custom tune. At this point, you're adding enough additional fuel through the meth system that it can actually act as a supplemental fuel, as well as cooling and raising the octane. The DME might not be able to compensate with short-term fuel trims, and that could lead to unsafe conditions, if not properly accounted for in the tune. But here's the thing, meth injection is not a substitute for poor fueling. It does not replace your DI upgrades. It sure as hell does not fix a weak fuel pump or a bad tune. If your tune depends on meth for fuel, the pump fails, you're done. Knock, detonation, melted piston, game over. Running meth safely as fuel means using a quality setup with flow sensors, pressure switches, and ECU integration fail-safes. Now, most of us aren't doing that with a boot mod or an MHD, but you have other programs that are capable of doing that. But when using water meth setup, it's key to try and keep your ethanol water mixtures consistent. If you're running a 50-50, don't switch to a 70-30 one day and go back to 50-50 the next. Make it as consistent as possible. So here's my take. Meth has its place in the game, but it's not for beginners, and it's not to fix a poor fueling system. It's a great modification if you're looking for extra edge and cooling IATs and maybe adding a little bit of octane. But is water meth worth it for the N55? And I personally say yes, but only if done right. So let me show you guys the install and how to do it correctly on the 640, and let's get this V3 install going.
All right, so we got our AEM V3 methanol kit here. So we got fuel line, vacuum hose for boost reference. We have the pump, and then obviously the controller harness, hardware to mount. Let's see, yeah, parts that go into the tank, harness, loom. So we got everything we need here for this. Over here, we have the stealth tank. Now, this does not technically fit in the 6 Series, but if you're part of a club like I am that's called We Will Figure It Out, I have figured it out, and so I made the changes, and let's see real quick. So, where there's a will, there's a way. Take that out, take this out. Now, I've already removed the battery bracket and the holders and the foam. So I was able to move the battery back enough. So right now it is there. So now this, what we'll do is we'll secure the pump to the bottom of this. And then you will have your inlet from the tank to the pump, and then the pump out. And then we'll go ahead and just mount this right there. And then the other piece stays out. This slides back in, and you don't lose any trunk space. Awesome. So that's why I love this. Like I said, it's technically not meant for this car. It's meant for the F10 chassis. So all my F10 people, this is meant for your car. You don't have to make any modifications that I made to make this work. If you're a 6 Series guy, you got to make some modifications. You have to cut some things. You have to push the battery back. You have to remove some foam and do a few other things. It will fit. Now, obviously, the battery's pretty snug. It's got a little room to move. I'm going to make a bracket that goes down here, this hole right here that you can see. And when it sets in there, we're going to have a battery holder and a tank holder. So we're going to go ahead and make that. We're going to put the bolt down there in the center, and then we're going to have something that holds the tank and the battery so it can't move. So right now it can move a little bit, but once we get that holder in there, it'll be good to go. And then we'll go ahead, put the pump on the tank, run the wire and the hose from the pump to the front of the car where I'm looking to have everything mounted, and we'll go from there. And I just want to emphasize real quick, if you put the battery back for 6 Series guys, you have this bracket here that holds it in place. You can still put the end-to-end holder on. It's just the forward and aft. You are not able to put that holder on. So we're gonna go ahead, like I said, this is pushed all the way back. It can't go back any further. It's being stopped. And so then when we make the bracket here to hold both of those down, we'll be good to go, and it won't be able to go fore and aft. As it is, with that tank in place, it won't be able to really move. Obviously with fluid in the tank and the pump on the tank, the pump is pretty heavy. You're not really gonna get too much movement, but it's still a good idea to try to hold it down. But it's mostly just for the fore and aft. The tank kind of is gonna do that already, but totally up to you if you wanna make the bracket or just leave the tank in there and let the weight hold it down. So, yep. All right, so the first couple things you gotta do is, this comes with 2 of these. Everything is quick disconnects. So really easy to put in, really easy to locate. So there's that. Now you have to use those because of how close this comes right here, obviously, to the tank, so it fits in nicely. And then this one obviously comes from this unit. So you will thread this in here. We're gonna use some thread dope or tape, and we're gonna thread that in there. And then we're gonna go ahead and run that to this. With this line, we'll run that line, something like that probably, or something of the sort that makes sense. We'll show you. This goes into here. You'll unthread this, put that in there, and then you'll tighten this down onto that, and then we'll thread that onto there, and we'll come back and we'll show you what it looks like. Now the best way to go about this is you want to put all 4 into here first, and then you'll go ahead and set it and just align the top ones. The bottom ones will self-align, but like anything that requires location of 4 holes, you want to start, but you don't want to finish. You just want to make sure everything starts and that they all have rubber grommets, so you can easily make adjustments on fitment, on where they line up in the hole. So like obviously this one's a little bit off, you can manipulate it and then start threading. And so it might take a few times to get it right, but there we go. So that one was, we had to manipulate a little bit, and then this last one should be the same way. Should go in nice. Might need to manipulate it as well. We can look down this area. Okay, it needs a little bit persuasion on the back side, so grab another screwdriver and then just go ahead and push against that rubber piece and get that started, and you'll feel it catch. And then there it goes. And now we're threading. So then we'll go ahead and start with the fuel line here. So we'll go ahead, quick disconnect, push that in there. You'll feel it click. Make sure we feel that click. There we go. We are in. Tug test, good to go. Okay, so that's done. So now onto this piece. Okay, so for those that are new of using pipe dope or tape dope, the tape you want to circulate in the direction you're going to thread. So obviously we're tightening, and so we want the tape to be going with the threading because you don't want it unraveling as you tighten it. So we got it on there, and now we're going to go ahead and thread this in. I know some people will probably like with Tyler, you probably don't need it because it's a plastic thread, but I am going to use it anyways. And then now it's the time to determine how you want this line to run from this joint to that. So we'll just go ahead and lightly put this in. It is not tightened down yet. And then now we're going to figure out the orientation, which suits it best. Let's see about that. That seems like it's got a nice flow to it. Doesn't have too much pressure on the fitting there. That's nice and snug in there. We're not getting any kinks or any crimps. We can start tightening this a little bit, and let's just take a look at it. I still think that's going to be okay. All right, so our next objective is to determine where we're going to put the controller for the harness. Now, I've seen some people put it in the trunk, and obviously that makes everything really easy to wire. You wire to the battery, you wire your pump straight here. So everything is pretty much right here. that you could possibly need to wire it up. I think there's maybe a couple wires that need to run forward. But because I like ease of access, I'm going to run it in the cab. So I want to find somewhere in the cab. Now on the F10, they have a compartment here that my car had that had just a simple latch, and you opened it and I had the controller right there. I can make adjustments and then close it, and then I had an arm light here. But I'm not going to do all that. I found a location here where I think I'm going to install this here, and then I'm going to drill a hole and open this part. Let me take this out. So I'm going to take that apart. I'm going to run a hole through there and then run the wiring loom through there, and then that'll just sit right in here like so, more flush right next to the draggy. So then I can make adjustments, and then I don't need an additional armed LED. I have this status here, so worst case, if I want to see what's going on with it, I can take a look. Good to go. All right, so now that we got the power and the ground situated for the controller, the next thing for the controller I'm going to need to do is the signal source. So this is going to be when you turn on your car, so it's not, the pump and everything is not always on. So we're going to go to the auto parts store and get a fuse tap. And what we're going to do is we're going to find a fuse that is only on when accessory is on, so it's not a full-time 12-volt source. So we'll go ahead and find that, and then we'll put that source on. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to feed the fuel line down to the front of the car. So we'll run the fuel line through the plunger and then down the bottom of the car, and then I'll show you how I route it on the bottom of the car.
Okay, I don't know if you guys can see that, but that's where the meth line comes out. Now what we wanted to do was we came over the rear subframe and we wanted to follow the brake lines, because obviously we want to stay out of the way of anything that rotates or moves. So like the axle, the differential moves up and down, so we went over the subframe, and here's the brake lines and here's the meth line. We removed this panel and we ran the meth line down here along with the brake lines above this fuel tank holder. So now that we've got that, what I'm going to do is, I don't know if BMW knew that we were going to run meth lines on this car, but we're going to go ahead, we'll put a zip tie here to hold that there, and we're going to run this line here. Actually, I'm going to do this a little bit better. So I'm going to run this meth line here, and then there's an additional holder all the way down the fuel line, following the fuel line. So you have an actual placeholder. There's another one here. Let's try to get this one in. There we go. And there's literally an additional line all the way back up. So I didn't know if BMW predicted this, but we got a holder for the meth line going all the way up. So once you remove this panel, the underbelly panel, you'll see your fuel line. Obviously this is where I have my fuel at reader. So we'll follow this, then we'll go up into the wheel well, into the engine compartment, and we're all done.
All right, now that we have the meth line secured all the way to this point, you'll remove this inner wheel well, and there is, again, the trend follows an additional line location. So go ahead and slide this on in there, and then we will re-secure it like so. And then there's another one here. We'll go ahead, follow the blue fuel line. So we'll go ahead and then now we will feed this line up through the engine compartment. So now we'll come up here, and here it is. And we've officially got to our charge pipe. So now I like to route this obviously as clean as possible to where it doesn't look like it's sticking out like a sore thumb. So I'll run it behind the heater hose, and we'll do this. Run it there, run it here. And as you know, we're only going to this bung right here on your charge pipe. So that's a pretty solid spot right here. And like I said, it's not too much of an eyesore. So now we're going to go ahead and take that bung out and put in the jets. All right, so with the kit, you get 2 nozzles, and then within the kit, you get 3 of these atomizing pintles. And now what this pintle does is it's got a certain amount of cutouts, and as the fuel or the water meth is injected through this portion from the line in here, and it distributes the water meth out of this hole right here. So what we'll do is we'll take this apart real quick just to kind of show you. So you remove this clip, and then this is the quick disconnect portion of the assembly, and then you'll tip it. You have, this is the check valve. Now these can go bad. I've had a few of them go bad before, so thankfully they give you 2 sets, so hopefully that doesn't happen here. You have your screen, your spring, and then your atomizing pintle. So this is obviously a filter, and then you have your spring and atomizing pintle. So now this one has a slit in the top of it, and so based off of their graph here, that slot is a 250cc pintle. So that's what we want to run, because right now we're just on an OTS tune and we're not in a custom tune range. So we'll go ahead, you put the pintle in the spring into the screen, drop that in there. You'll go ahead and drop in your check valve, and then we'll make sure that sits in there nicely. Then you'll push back in kind of firmly the quick disconnect fitting, and then you'll go ahead and put this clip back in. Now when we put this clip back in, what you need to do is push down on the quick disconnect, and then it'll go in. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and take the bung out of the charge pipe like this. Remove that. I'm going to set that here. Now, something I want everybody to be aware of. The charge pipe is aluminum threads. This has aluminum threads. Do not get crazy with cranking this down. You want to just tighten it snugly. It doesn't need a lot of pressure, and you want to really make sure that you do this correctly because this is what can happen if you do not take care of how you install the nozzle into the charge pipe. So don't do that. Make sure, and this, honestly, I don't think this was preventable. This was just over a long period of time, cheap charge pipe. So what we want to do is we want to just go ahead and nice and gently thread this on here with our fingers. So you'll feel that get snug. And then what we're going to do is grab a wrench, and we're just going to gently rotate it. We're not going to put a whole lot of torque on it. And then we'll cut the line to size, and then we'll put it into the quick disconnect fitting. All right, so 1/2 inch or 13, and we're just going to go ahead and just real lightly snug it in like so. Once you start to feel it give a lot of resistance like that, that means we're good. We don't need to go much past that. So now when cutting your line, do not use, don't use wire cutters, don't use dikes, don't use anything of the sort. You want to use a razor blade because you do not want to pinch this at the same time while trying to cut it. So we're going to go ahead and grab a razor blade. We're going to mark where we want this to be. So you don't want it to be it actually injects in there pretty far, or slides in there pretty far. So we want to say probably around that area. We'll cut with a razor blade, and then we'll put it on in there. All right, so we cut it with the razor blade, and you can see how smooth and how perfect that cut is. Now another thing I wanted to mention is that when you go to put this on, you want to make sure that it is flowing smoothly. You don't want this to kink. You don't want to have a hard pinch in it. You want to make sure it's got a nice flow, and that goes for the entire line. You don't want to pull too tightly on this, so go ahead, put it in, push down, and you'll feel it go clip, and then there you are. And so see how this line has got a nice flow radius to it? That's what you want. You don't want anything too exaggerative and tight and causing issues with flow. So we're in, do a tug test, pull on it lightly, we're good to go. All right, so we have the controller installed. Went pretty nicely. We got it all pushed back in. What we have here is a test button, and then obviously this that will tell us our status. But first what we need to do is we need to run the vacuum line into the engine compartment so that we can get a vacuum source or a boost source. All right, so we removed the panel underneath the dash. Obviously the airbag comes off, it's two 10 millimeters. And then to get the panel off, it is two, I think, T15s. So that drops down. We ran the boost tube along this path right here, and then I secured it in, there's a vent hold. I secured it in that. And then we found another plunger that goes out to the engine compartment, and we took the route of using where the hood release, so the cable right here for the hood release goes out through a plunger. So we made a small hole and went out that plunger, and we'll come around here. All right, so now we're in the engine compartment area. You have to remove this panel. And so so this is the cable right here that we're talking about for the hood. And as you can see, right next to it down there is the vacuum line that comes out of that plunger. And then we routed it behind the brake booster. And there is another gland that comes out from the firewall for this vacuum line. So we went ahead and ran it out this. All right, so you can see the vacuum line right there coming out of that gland from the firewall for our boost source. And I have it going, I have one of those map extensions, so it allows me to get a vacuum source. So the map sensor mounts to the top of it, and it gives me a nipple that gives me a vacuum or boost reference. So I temporarily have it running my blow-off valve until we get the new intake manifold. So we have it teed into that, so that's where our boost reference is coming from. So that is the completed setup for the boost source, and now we'll get the tank filled. All right, so one thing that they'll tell you, and I'm gonna tell you, is that you only wanna use distilled water. You want something that is pure and doesn't have a bunch of, minerals and deposits in the water, because that will gunk up your line, and you don't wanna deal with that, and it'll gunk up the jet. So you wanna use just distilled water. But when we start this, the first thing I'd recommend putting about a half a gallon in here. Let's put about half a gallon in there. And then what we're gonna do is, one, we wanna check for leaks on the tank, make sure all the fittings are solid. So, and then we will just lift this up slightly and make sure we don't got any water at the bottom of our, no water. All right, so we're gonna test to make sure that we got fluid coming out now. Go ahead and hit it and hold it. So we gotta purge the line. So there it goes. All right, hold it again. All right, we got fluid flow. There it goes. Okay, stop. And we're getting water. So we've obviously cleaned out the line, and now we know we got water purged into the system. So we'll go ahead and connect this back up here, and then now I will put methanol into the tank with the water. Since we have no leaks, everything seems to be working, and then we'll go from there. All right, so we got the water meth injection system complete. It's all in. We tested it, checked it for leaks. Everything's ready to go. So we're gonna go ahead and hit the road here, and I'm gonna show you guys some data on what it looks like when you have it running and when you don't have it running. Obviously I have an upgraded intercooler, so that helps. So let's go ahead and do some hits after I get these springs on, and we'll show you guys what that looks like. All right, so I've been cruising around the neighborhood just trying to get the IATs kind of high. So right now they're at 119, 121. We have the methanol starting at 4 PSI, and then it full spray by, I think I have it at 10 PSI. So let's go ahead and make a hit out here, and we'll see how much the methanol helps our IATs. Now right now I have 83 degrees outside. So I'm gonna go ahead and log this, and we're gonna go ahead and see what it says. So we're at 119 right now, and we'll just go ahead and do a hard hit. All right, and we got our IATs all the way down to 95. So that's pretty good, from 120 to 95. That's an improvement, obviously. When I was doing hits before, I don't think I was seeing below 100. But we'll go ahead, now that we got it low, we'll go ahead and turn around and do it again and see if we can get it to go even lower. So we're at 103, 106. So we'll go ahead and make another hit. All right, car's got some giddy up, and we got they're coming down more and more. We got down to 92. So it's definitely helping us. Now, not as significant as my last setup. I had a 1000 cc spindle thing in there, so obviously, but that was with a tune. So this is still with just the OTS tune, and so we don't want to get too crazy with it. But yeah, like I said, it got down to 91 from 105, 106. So that's pretty good. Normally the intercooler, car sounds real good right now. So yeah, we'll go inside, take a look at the data, and then I'll post the data right here now so you can take a look at it.
All right, so here's the before log. As you see, we started at 117 IATs. Boost comes up, and the intercooler initially starts to help a little bit, brings down to about 106, 107, but then it hops back up mid-pull. Now this is a single gear pull, so obviously less stress, less heat being transferred. In the after log here, this is a multiple gear pull, and as you see, we start at 106, and as boost comes up, we drop down to 102, 100, 99, 98, so, and it's holding there at about 98, 99. And what you'll notice at the end of this pull is as the demand goes away, the temperature actually keeps coming down, and we get all the way down to about 92. So you can see the system's really helping here. All right, so there's that whole process. We went over methanol injection and how it can benefit your system. We completed the AEM V2 or V3 methanol injection system. So got that all running. We showed you guys the data on how it helps. Now, obviously, as I get a custom tune and I'm able to increase the size of those atomizing pintles, we'll be able to get the temperatures to come down even further. But with that, I'm gonna need carry in order to make sure that we're not causing any issues with the fueling, as it'll obviously be supplemental fuel at that time, and we'll be raising the octane significantly. So we wanna make sure that that's all dialed, but we got it all going. And tomorrow's dyno day. I'm gonna be back at ECC Tune this week, and we're gonna get this thing back on the dyno, and I'm gonna do a stage 1 dyno again with all the new modifications done to the car to see what kind of increase we saw from stage 1 from bone stock to full bolt-on. And then we're gonna go ahead and do a stage 2, and then I'm gonna try to see what it does with a stage 2 plus without an aftermarket high pressure fuel pump. So we got that going on tomorrow. Really excited to get that data and share that with you guys. And yeah, things coming along nicely. Very happy with the progress. I'm actually having a lot of fun with this stock turbo. I'm not gonna lie, the car actually has some pretty good get up. It's fun to drive and definitely enjoyable. So I'm actually really enjoying the car in its current state with a stock turbo. So that's fun, but definitely looking forward to putting the Pure 500 on there. Got her sitting back there on the table. So we'll get that going hopefully here in the next couple weeks. I'm in Montana for a week for my fiance's birthday. So after that, we'll come back, put on the Pure 500 and see how she runs. So thanks again for everybody joining the channel. Hit like, hit subscribe. I really appreciate it. I hit 2,500 subscribers just last week. Super exciting. Hit the 4,000 hour mark, watched hours. So all of this is very exciting. Never thought that this would come to this. So yeah, I really appreciate everybody's subbing and comments and just a lot of positive outreach. I really appreciate that, and look forward to continuing this journey. So definitely, again, hit like, hit subscribe. Check us out on inhouseperformance.com. We'll get you guys hooked up with Pure Turbos, Dorsch Engineering parts, anything and everything on the website, Variant Wheels. If you have questions, reach out, shoot me an email at tyler.house@inhouseperformance.com, or you can hit me up on my socials. I'll happily answer questions. If you guys need help getting a setup put together where you want to, have the complete package, we'll get you guys dialed, and I'll walk you through everything, and hopefully we can help you out on pricing too. So definitely reach out if you have any questions. And other than that, thanks again. Talk to you guys soon. Have a good week and weekend, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Take it easy.